Hare Krishna Prabhuji, this is Santosh.
Hari Bol, Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for joining, all of you. So, last weekend we had a wonderful program of Ram Navami, and
Yes, Prabhuji.
This Sunday, right, we are also planning to have a very, very special session, because we are very, very fortunate to have with us a very, very senior devotee of our congregation. She is not only very, very well accomplished in her career, but also so much absorbed in the devotional service, right? It's very difficult to find who is so accomplished, at the same time so humble and so dedicated in the service of Srila Prabhupada's movement. So yes, we have Grace Madhumati Puskarini Mataji. She is really has done her PhD in the economics. So Madhumati Puskarini Mataji is there. Maybe Anand Prabhu, if you can check with me.
Yes, Prabhuji, I saw Mataji join. She was there. I can still see her.
Yeah, the audio is not connected, I think.
Oh.
Mataji seems to have some audio issues.
I will call her.
Yeah, so we are really giving you different flavors from the different devotees, how exactly they have been doing in their so-called family life, in their corporate life, or in their social life. So that all of us can be inspired, from all these devotees, that it's not that once we are dedicated in the service of Srila Prabhupada, or like we're practicing Krishna consciousness, it doesn't mean that we leave, our responsibilities. And then, I think some of you must have seen already, the profile of Mataji. She's so accomplished in her career, and at the same time, so dedicated and counseling and guiding so many devotees, especially in this area and all over India. Okay. So, and also she is a very, very good singer. She sings very beautiful kirtan for the pleasure of their lordships. And has a wonderful family. Mataji's husband is a doctor. She is a superintendent of the nearby hospital. And she's having two kids, two sons, Prahlad and Dhruv. Both are really wonderfully grown up. Just in the teenager, but the way Mataji really brings up all these kids is really exemplary. Hare Krishna Mataji, your audio is there?
Yes, Mataji has joined in. Yeah, I think audio is feeble.
Okay, there are two. Okay, thank you, Mataji. Yes, so we just wanted to give a quick glimpse of Mataji's profile, though we can never end with respect to Mataji's academic qualification or what she has been doing, but just to give you a glimpse, right? Yes, she has done her PhD, and then like she is currently in this RV University as an assistant dean in the School of Economics and Finance. And she has been also contributing a lot with respect to Manipal institutes. They're like in the Center of European Studies. She's really very multifaceted and multi-skilled personality, right? And like she's known as an educationalist and as a guide, counselor, and administrator and practitioner of Bhakti, right? And like she's so humble, so dedicated, that hundreds of devotees are really looking forward to Mataji's for guidance in their Bhakti, and also most importantly, how to bring up the kids, in this process of devotion. And not only in our society, but also now she's coming up with the books, Krishna willing, it will be there all over Karnataka and possibly all over India as a standard textbook, right? Which all the students will be studying as a part of their value education curriculum, right? So yes, we are very fortunate to have Mataji, and today we'll be hearing from Mataji about the essence of Mahaprabhu's instructions, the Shikshastakam. She will help us understanding the importance of Shikshastakam. We'll hear the recitation of Shikshastakam, how to recite it, and then considering the paucity of time, maybe she will be covering only the first verse of the Shikshastakam. So thank you very much, Mataji. Welcome once again to our humble program.
Thank you very much, Sudhir Gopal Prabhuji. That was a very generous introduction. Devotees are always very kind. So you must take it with a little pinch of salt. But anyway, thank you very much for inviting me. And I'm very happy that so many of you all have started this process of Krishna consciousness. It's like a treasure that suddenly opens up, and you wonder, where was it all these days? Yes, and why did I get it now? Why so late? So it's very nice that you have hit on this path, and you have come in touch with devotees who will very nicely guide you on this path, be with you. So let me start with some prayers, and then like Prabhuji mentioned, we will go through some of the basic understanding of the Shikshastakam. Okay, so Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupah Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapatakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute तप्त कांचन गौरांगी श्री राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे अजानुलंबित भुजौ कनकावदातौ संकीर्तनैकपितरौ कमलायताक्षौ विश्वम्भरौ द्विजवरौ युगधर्मपालौ वन्दे जगत्प्रियकरौ करुणावतारौ योऽन्तः प्रविश्य मम वाचमिमां प्रसूक्तां सञ्जीवयत्यखिलशक्तिधरा स्वधाम्ना अन्यांश्च हस्तचरणश्रवणत्वगादीन् प्राणान् नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यम्. Thank you. We recite these prayers so we get into the right mood with blessings of the Lord and His devotees, all the teachers, the spiritual mentors, without whose blessings it's impossible to speak anything which will actually make a difference. The whole point of taking up to spiritual life, as I understand, is only to transform our hearts. Right? All of you have this desire, which is why you have decided to take up this path. So let me begin with
Sorry, Mataji, to interrupt you. Is
No
it
problem.
possible to increase the volume a little bit, Mataji?
Yeah. Let me try that. Okay. Is it better? Any better now?
Yes, Mataji. Yes.
Okay. All right. So I wanted to begin with speaking on how Gauranga Mahaprabhu, now you all have just been introduced to him, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, was born on Holi. All of you know this, yes? Or maybe some of you don't know this, but he was born on this festival of Holi Purnima. Yes, Holi is the day when, throughout India, we have this festival where we, celebrate with colors, isn't it? So it's important to know why Mahaprabhu was born on Holi. What is the significance of his appearance, as we say, on this festival of colors? We all know about Holika, who was Hiranyakashipu's sister. Of course, this is history of another age. But not so long ago, that is in the Dwapara Yuga, when Krishna was around, there was this exchange of colors celebrating this particular day when Holika, who was the sister of Hiranyakashipu, was defeated by Prahlad Maharaj, little Prahlad we know, who was the devotee of Lord Narasimhadev. But now even more recently, that is even now contemporary, what happens in Vrindavan and a small town called Barsana. So we all have heard of Vrindavan being the place where Krishna was born and he did all his beautiful pastimes of stealing the butter and all that we know. But there's also a place close by which is called as Barsana, and that's the place where Srimati Radharani was born. As you have heard, you must have heard of Radha and Krishna. And sometimes, especially in South India, we feel that this is some, character of imagination. But when we go to Vrindavan, when we go to Barsana, we can see the places where actually they lived and all these pastimes happened. So, even today, there is this day where it begins with a conversation between who? Between people of Vrindavan and people of Barsana. Why? People of Barsana, they represent the party of Radharani, yes, and the people of Vrindavan, they represent Krishna's party. So they sit with some kind of a conversation, and the conversation is not so pleasant. Why? Because they are kind of arguing with each other. They say that, your Krishna, people of Barsana, they begin like that. It says, your Krishna, he is black. His heart is black. He's absolutely no compassion. They begin like this. For us, it's difficult to digest. But people of Barsana, they know how Krishna is. He just can leave them anytime and go away, yes, as he did to Dwaraka. So then, they begin accusing. And then people of Vrindavan, they say, no, it's not us. It's you people of Barsana. They dare not say anything against Radharani. They don't. Nobody says. But they try to defend their Krishna and they say, no, not us. It's you. And this conversation goes on to become like one, somebody gets so heated up that throws some dust. And then it starts with the other throwing dust and water and this and that. So it bursts into a festival of colors hurling at each other with love, but still fighting and arguing. Right? So we have many days celebrating this festival in the land of Vrindavan in Braj, where people are doing this, where people are hurling things at each other, but they're arguing in a state of love. But finally, who wins? It's the people of Barsana who win. It is Radharani who wins. And why? Because her love for Krishna is supreme, and Krishna wants her to win. And this is exactly why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was born on Holi, to represent this victory of love of Radharani, right? So it's so beautiful that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who who wanted to display this love, who wanted to teach this love, he gave us this Shikshastakam. So let me now share my screen and take you to a few slides just for reference. I hope all of you can see. Let me put it on slide.
Yes, Mataji.
So this is exactly what I was saying. Yes, the kind of Holi that happens there is called as the Latmar Holi, where you can see women, Matajis from Barsana, they hit people from Vrindavan or Nandagaon, saying that you people are cheaters. Right. So now we'll discuss the Shikshastakam, which was given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the absolute last stage of his pastimes. So as we understand, the life of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as, as we see here displayed was in 3 stages. Okay, one is called as the Adi Leela, the first bit, then the Madhya Leela, and then the Antya Leela. So, in the 48 years that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spent time here on planet Earth, if that's how I explain children, yes. So then they begin to understand that, oh yeah, this is real. So when he spent these years, the last years, few years, which is the Antalila, he spent much of the time, most of the time, in fact, in Jagannath Puri. And in all of his pastimes, like a biography is recorded by a saint called Krishnadas Kaviraj in this book called Chaitanya Charitamrita. And on this also some of you may be knowing. So this Shikshastakam, as the word goes, Shiksha and Ashtakam, is a set of 8 verses of instruction. Yes, Shiksha means instruction. Ashtaka means a poetry which has 8 verses. Yes, Ashta. And these were the verses which Mahaprabhu, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as we call him, or Gauranga as we call him, or Shri Krishna Chaitanya, all of these are his names. He spoke these verses in different contexts, in different times to different people. And Krishnadas Kaviraj, he compiled them in the very last chapter of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. In the last chapter of the Antalila, these verses are recorded. Now, what is so special about Shikshastakam is that it sets out the process of bhakti very, very systematically. Right? So, for some of us who begin on this path, we begin with what? With an idea that this is most of us come looking for happiness. Yes, nothing wrong in it. All of us are looking for some respite, some happiness, and we find this emotional connect with God very appealing. But that this process of bhakti is very scientific and systematic was explained by Mahaprabhu, who is none but Krishna himself. Right? He came, like you've heard, in the mood of a devotee and not that of Krishna, just to teach us how does one actually exhibit or begin to love Krishna, right, or God, because that's the most difficult part, isn't it? When there is something that is forced upon us, that's not love. Something which is very voluntary and natural, that is love. And that love for God is something very difficult for us, because we are now kind of used to many other forms of love. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he came to teach us this. Yeah, how does one express this love which is very unconditional? And we'll see how beautifully bhakti is defined as pure when it is unconditional and uninterrupted. So in the Bhagavatam, which records all of Krishna's pastimes, so you must know that there are 3 important books. Bhagavad Gita, all of us know Bhagavad Gita, and there is Srimad Bhagavatam. Some of us have heard of Srimad Bhagavatam. And then there is Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is mentioned here. So while the Bhagavad Gita is all about Krishna's teachings, the Bhagavatam is about Krishna's activities, and the Chaitanya Charitamrita is about Krishna's feelings and emotions. And that's so deep, isn't it? So that's Chaitanya Charitamrita, which Mahaprabhu explained, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains, or he just expresses through his own emotions and his own feelings for the Supreme Lord Krishna. So he teaches us this bhakti in Srimad Bhagavatam is defined as savai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhaktir adhokshache ahaituki apratihata yayatma suprasidati. So it says that is bhakti which is unmotivated and uninterrupted. Now, very 2 important qualifications, unmotivated and uninterrupted. That is unconditional. Yes, and that is this important definition, which summarizes everything that you will learn in Krishna consciousness. How does one develop this kind of a love, this kind of bhakti, is being taught in the Shikshastakam by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So before we recite, the Shikshastakam itself, I'll just give you some brief terms, meaning of some terms, which are important for us to understand. But not that we'll go into too much technical understanding, but a broad overview. And if anybody has a doubt, please feel free to put it up on the chat box so that we can address them. Yes, please note them down, put it up on the chat box, and then you can even unmute and ask. So here on this slide, we're talking about the different stages of bhakti. Like I said, bhakti is extremely scientific. It's systematic. So the spiritual teachers, the mentors, the gurus, they have actually divided this into 3 important stages. Of course, there is a lot more details, but we are not getting into that. The first one talks about sadhana bhakti. The second is bhava, and third is prema bhakti, which is the ultimate, what we just spoke. But before that, like we understand, this is a gradual process, right? So before that is bhava bhakti, but it begins with sadhana bhakti. And what is this sadhana bhakti? As I've indicated in the parenthesis, it is about practice. Which means what? I'm doing something, even though I'm not liking it, I'm doing it. Yes, not everything we do, we may like, especially waking up in the morning is quite a challenge. And then chanting a fixed number of rounds or reading, all that is not so natural in us, right? But that is sadhana. Sadhana itself means practice, where you keep bombarding the same thing over and over and over again. Let me give you this very interesting thing that I heard. Now, there's a process in Ayurveda where they want to mix mercury and sulfur, these 2 things. And as we know, the mercury is very slippery, and sulfur is a powder, a chemical which is it's in the form of a powder. But they have to mix the 2, and somehow or the other, it seems quite difficult to mix the 2, simply because mercury is so slippery, right? So, but what do these Ayurvedic practitioners? What do? They put the sulfur in a mortar, small. We have this pestle and mortar, and they keep beating it up. The sulfur with the mercury, they beat and beat and beat. Mercury keeps slipping, but at one point, it just mixes. So why this example? Why this analogy? Is mercury, which is so slippery, is our mind, which is so fickle, and all of us can vouch for it, isn't it? There's nobody who can, I don't know. I mean, I'm talking about myself. It's so hard to say that, yeah, my mind is so fixed. Mind is so slippery like the mercury. But if we want to mix it with this sulfur, which is representing Krishna consciousness or Krishna, then we have to keep beating this, doing this beating process. And what is that process? Chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. You keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. And that is what is sadhana bhakti. And then suddenly what happens? We may come to this bhava bhakti stage, which is when actually mercury and sulfur, they mix, right? That's the second stage, where now whatever you do is very natural. You have attained a certain stage where you are able to see Krishna, not just figuratively, but even maybe literally. Yes. And then finally, you develop this prema bhakti or pure love. So while this is like a bud, this is fully blossomed. And this is just to give us an idea that there are different stages in this process of bhakti, and one has to be patient because this is quite gradual. Also, one needs to know that there are different stages in acquiring Vedic knowledge. Yes, how do we understand this? Now, I'm telling these 2 things especially, so that we understand the Shikshastakam quite clearly, right? So, these stages of Vedic knowledge begins with Sambandha Jnana, which means what? It's the first step where I begin to actually know, what is it that I want to connect myself to? Yes, how do I know? What do I connect myself to? Sambandha is to understand who am I, who is God, and what is my relationship with Him. This knowledge is Sambandha Jnana. For example, this is um, very easily understood when we give a example, when we give an example which is relevant to us. Say, for instance, we see a car, yes, and we want to buy it. So what is the Sambandha Jnana? Says, what is that car? How old is it? When was it? What is the latest? Is it the latest one? And all the aspects related to that particular car is going to give me a jnana, which is this: I'm establishing my relationship with that car. Unfortunately, but that was an example. But what is abhideya then? Then I go on to find out, do I have the finance, the required finance? What do I do to buy this car? What do I need to do? Do I need to apply a loan? What do I need to do to actually go ahead and say that I want to buy this car, right? So that's the second stage, which in the purview of spiritual or Vedic knowledge is abhideya. When I begin to act in accordance with that relationship which I know I have just established. So for instance, when I know who am I, which is much being spoken in the Bhagavad Gita, it says you are this, Arjuna is being told by Krishna and again and again and again in the second chapter. What does he say? He says, you're talking like a very intelligent person. He says, Natvevaham chatunasam natvam ne me janadhipaha. So he says, don't worry. None of these people here, they are going to die because they've always existed. They will exist. They are existing and they will continue to exist. Why? Because they are spirit souls. So that was the Sambandha Jnana. And Krishna who is Krishna? He establishes that also in the Bhagavad Gita. Aham sarvasya prabhavo, and so many verses where he establishes his own position. And then what is my relationship? What should I do? He says, for you, what should you do? Ma manusmara yuddhacha. Yes, always remember me because I'm your friend, Krishna says. Right? I'm your very loving friend. So that was the Sambandha Jnana. When I know that, I begin to act in accordance with that relationship, which is abhideya. And when I do that, yes, when I do this abhideya, which is either chanting or reading to get my Sambandha Jnana very clear, and then I associate with people who know, so I can hear from them. And I begin to see what are they doing? How do they act? Arjuna asks this question in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna, you're talking about this person, a strange species looks like. Yes, ISKCON devotee. But how does he speak? How does he sit? How does he walk? He's asking this to Krishna. And Krishna describes that. And that is a part of abhideya. When I begin to inquire like this from devotees. And if I do that on a very regular basis, then the mercury and the sulfur, they will meet. And I go to prayojana. I go to realizing my final goal, right? So it's like this Google map, which you turn on as soon as you start driving. You want to go to some place, you turn this on. What happens? It shows your destination, but it also shows the way. Yes, it also shows the hurdles, the different problems that you will face or whatever on the path, the traffic, etc. Right? So this is exactly what it is. This path, prayojana, goes till the goal, destination. But before that, I should know where I need to go. That's my Sambandha Jnana. How I need to go. Abhideya. And then finally, I reach my destination. So these are the stages of the Vedic knowledge, which are important for us to understand while we study the Shikshastakam. Right. Now, let's see. What does the Shikshastakam? How does it help us understand what we just spoke? The sadhana, bhava, and the prema bhakti that we spoke about, or the sambandha, prayojana, and the abhideya jnana also that we spoke about. So this is a proper systematic understanding of the Shikshastakam, where it begins with teaching us the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Why and what happens? It begins with that. Then it says, oh, but I am not capable. What is the problem? What is my inability in taking to this chanting process? Then it also, oops, I'm so sorry. It also talks about the procedure of chanting. What is so important in terms of your attitude? It talks about that. Then it talks about how does one rid oneself of all those problems. Like we saw the map, what are the ways in which we will, these problems, they appear, and how can one get rid of them? And then beginning with finding out, oh, this is my original spiritual identity, destination. Yes. But how does one reach that? How does one experience that good fortune of coming closer to that destination? And once you are in that state of consciousness, we actually begin to acquire a mood of separation. Oh, why am I not there? Why am I still not there? That kind of a mood. Yes. So it's like when you want to go somewhere, you know the destination, and you see that, oh, it's quite long. The way is long. So you begin to feel some kind of an anxiety, but that anxiety is different because this anxiety is for Krishna. You want to go closer to Krishna and his devotees. And finally, how to obtain this highest perfection in the matter of finding one's absolute necessity of that goal. Yes, how does one actually develop a very unconditional love for that destination, which is Krishna, or Krishna, love for Krishna. Yes. And if we see here, the next two columns are talking about the first 5 verses. They refer to the practice that we are talking about. Yes. And the next 2 verses will talk about Bhava Bhakti, where you get this bud. Yes, you get this bud of natural love. Now you don't have to be forced by anybody, but you've come there, you feel you're experiencing something, and finally the bud is fully blossomed, which is in the form of the Prema Bhakti. Similarly, the first 5 verses give you Sambandha Jnana, and the 7 and 6, 7, 8 are giving you Prayojana Jnana. But all of these verses are talking about Abhideya, which is what? The process. Yeah, Sambandha is establishing the relationship, Abhideya is the process, and Prayojana finally is the goal. Okay, so that was the introduction to Shikshastakam. And now, so the way I had it was focusing on the first verse. But if Sudhir Gopal Prabhuji should tell me if I should recite the entire Shikshastakam now.
Yeah, Mataji, we can recite first the 8 verses, and then we can just give an intro, and maybe subsequently we'll plan for a detailed session as well, Mataji.
Right. So do you want to share that screen of Shikshastakam, full Shikshastakam? I don't have that, but I can.
Yeah.
And then we can focus only on the first verse. So I have given an introduction to Shikshastakam.
Yeah. We can just read. We can recite from the Shikshastakam. Yes. I'm just sharing the screen.
Yes. In the meanwhile, if anybody had any doubts or anything, comments, questions, please put it up on the chat box. Okay. All right. So you all can recite wherever you are, but on mute, because then there is a lag and it may not sound so nice. So we will anyway recite for others for reference. It's right in front of you. So we learn how to recite this. चेतोदर्पणमर्चनं भवमहादावाग्निनिर्वापणं श्रेयः कैरवचन्द्रिका वितरणं विद्यावधू जीवनम् आनन्दाम्बुधिवर्धनं प्रतिपदं पूर्णामृतस्वादनम् सर्वात्मा स्नपनं परं विजयते श्रीकृष्णसङ्कीर्तनम् नामकारी बहुधा निज सर्वशक्तिः तत्रार्पिता नियमितस्मरणेन कालः एतादृशी तव कृपा भगवन्ममापि दुर्दैवमीदृशम् इहाजनेनानुरागः तृणादपि सुनिचेन तरोरपि सहिष्णुना मानेन मानदेन कीर्तनीया सदा हरिः न धनं न जनं न सुन्दरीं कवितां वा जगदीश कामये मम जन्मनि जन्मनीश्वरे भवताद् भक्तिरहैतुकी त्वयि अयि नन्दतनुज किङ्करम् पतितां मां विषमे भवाम्बुधौ कृपया तव पादपङ्कज स्थिता धूलिसदृशं विचिन्तया नयनं गलदश्रुधारया वदनं गद्गदरुधया गिरा पुलकैर्विचितं वपुः कदा तव नाम गृहणे भविष्यति युगायितं निमेषेण चक्षुषा प्रावृषायितं शून्यायितं जगत्सर्वं गोविन्दविरहेण मे आश्लिष्य वा पादरतां नष्टु माम् अदर्शनान्मर्महतां करोतु वा यथा तथा विदधातु लम्पटो मत्प्राणनाथस्तु स एव नापरः हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shikshastakam ki jai. Okay, so with these series going on, I'm sure all of you will memorize Shikshastakam and we will also understand every verse of Shikshastakam. So today we are going to focus on the first verse of Shikshastakam. So I already overshot my time? I just realized.
Yeah, Mataji, maybe we can just give a glimpse of it, Mataji, and subsequently we can cover in detail because this is a really very beautiful verse, the first verse itself. So maybe we can just a glimpse and then maybe subsequently Mataji can go in detail.
I'll do that. I'll just quickly, I didn't realize that I took quite some time in the introduction. All right, so this was the first verse and we'll just quickly read the translation. It says, glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life, of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtana movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss, and it enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. Right. So, to be very brief, this first verse is saying Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam, which means may the Shri Krishna Sankirtanam, which is the congregational chanting of the holy names, be always victorious. And why should they be victorious? Why should there be Jayate? Is because of the 7 benedictions that it gives. So we will just go through these 7 benedictions. But in detail, I cannot, though I had a reference for each one of them. So the first one is because it is the chanting of the holy name that cleanses the mirror of our heart. Cheto Darpana Marjanam. And how do we understand that? So the mirror here is very dirty. Why? We cannot see ourselves. And why can't we see ourselves? We can't see ourselves because we are seeing ourselves as the body and not the soul. So it's quite obvious that what Krishna is telling us in the Bhagavad Gita is not happening. We cannot look at ourselves as spirit souls, but we look at ourselves as the body. But by chanting, what happens? We can do this. We can cleanse this mirror. Then what happens is it extinguishes the forest fire of material existence. So the second stage is like, all right, I have cleansed the mirror. So what of that? What of that is this, that I am able to now very boldly say that I am not troubled by this forest fire of miseries that this world has to give. And none of us can say, even though we want to be an exception, none of us can say we are an exception to this law that all of us have miseries, our share of miseries. Yes, we cannot really be free of that. So that is again another advantage of benediction. And then third one, it says that it diffuses the moon rays of Bhava Bhakti for the highest good of the soul. How do we understand this? It's all auspicious. There's nothing inauspicious about it. But if you look at it in the parallel world here, what is good for one is really not necessarily good for the other. Yes, and the often quoted example is disease for one person is inauspicious, right? But it is so auspicious for the doctor who gets to earn by that disease. But the chanting of the holy names is not like that. It's auspicious for everybody. And then what happens with chanting of the holy name next is transcendental knowledge. Vidya Vadhush becomes like the wife. What does it mean? It just simply means that wherever this chanting of the holy name, transcendental knowledge automatically comes. You don't have to do extra effort by reading whole of the Vedas and performing yagyas and this and that. No, the transcendental knowledge just accompanies the chanting of the holy name, just as a wife would accompany a husband. Then it says Anandambudhi Vardhanam, this is an ocean of bliss. So there is something called temporary pleasures, Bhogananda, and there's something called Brahmananda. So Bhogananda is like a drop of water. Brahmananda is like, there is spiritual bliss, like, sometimes when we do meditation, we feel a lot of happiness. But what is that compared to? It is compared to the water that's accumulated in the mark of a hoof print of a calf, which is so small. So if there is some little water, that's the kind of pleasure. While bhoga, with this, the temporary pleasures like pizza or ice cream, they will give you a drop of pleasure. But what the chanting of the holy name will give you is ocean of bliss. That's what it says. And then this is Pratipadam Purnamrita Swadanam. It doesn't mean that it's there one time and not the other time, like what most of us do. One day we binge eat, or we do a lot of nonsense because we want to enjoy bhoga, and then we feel very frustrated, we feel very bad about it, and we say, no, tyaga. No, I'll not do it. I'll refrain from the internet for the next 10 days. Doesn't happen, but we do that. And then when we get frustrated of that, we again do bhoga. But bhoga tyaga keeps happening, but not so in case of the chanting of the holy names. It's a continuous pleasure or nectar that's available. And finally, it's completely pure. There is selflessness, which chanting of the holy name gives us, complete selflessness, right? So this is a very brief overview, though each of them needs a lot of discussion, but I'm very sorry I overshot. So Prabhuji,
No, Mataji, definitely we look forward to hear from you. No, Mataji, we look forward to hear more from you. But yeah, if like usually this set of verses, 8 verses, is the really essence of everything in a concise way the Mahaprabhu has given. And like the way you have explained very simplistically, how to introduce this concept of, right, like, sadhana bhakti, bhava bhakti, and prema bhakti, and really the Shikshastakam gives everything to us. So thanks for introducing us, and the way you have explained with that beautiful story from Varsana and Vrindavan, that really enlivened everybody. All right, but definitely a long way to go for us to really realize this beautiful verses. and the melody, through which you really sing that Shikshastakam, really coming from the heart, because that is there. So any thoughts from anybody? Anyone would like to know? It's a really once again a rare opportunity for us to associate with Mataji, like how she's so accomplished at the same time, so devotional and so dedicated. Any thoughts? There are a lot of messages on the chat. Anybody would like to ask any questions? Any thoughts?
No questions, Prabhuji. Just heartfelt thanks to you for arranging this session, and hope she will be kind enough to give us some more sessions.
Haribo, definitely we'll plan that one.
Thank you. Very good.
Prabhuji, only little bit has been explained. We want more so that we will come to know each verses very clearly and we can chant.
Thank you.
Prabhuji.
Really appreciate eagerness. Mataji is known for really beautiful storytelling. Mataji is known for explaining the most complex subject in a very simple way to the kids, to the teenager, and everybody. Right, that's why she is really coming with the beautiful books now, right, for all the students of all over India, right? So how they can really understand this value education into their life. Yes, definitely we look forward to hear from Mataji more. Any other thoughts, comments? So there's a lot to learn from Mataji, like how to be a good mother, how to be a good teacher, how to really a good wife, how to really be a good daughter. She's really all in one. There's a lot to learn.
Mataji, I just wanted to ask you one small thing. Mataji, how people came to know that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna, Lord Krishna?
Now if I start answering this question, Sudhir Gopal is going to say that because it takes, and you have asked a very valid question, because this question should arise in your mind. One has to, all of us have to question this. Nobody has to take these things blindly, but one has to know that every incarnation or appearance of the Lord has been recorded in scriptures, right? Shabda Praman. Shabda Praman is the voice of the scriptures. Without any evidence from the scriptures, one should not accept anybody as God. This is the first and foremost lesson that we need to most definitely acknowledge, right? And then the second bit is, all right, then I will listen. I will actually listen from somebody who knows this. Yes, so the Bhagavad Gita talks about a very important verse it gives, that vidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. So it says that how will you hear? You should hear from somebody who has seen. Tattvadarshi means what? One who knows the truth, who has experienced it, and who's a jnani. Yes, jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. This is a spiritual mentor, spiritual guru. But how should you listen? What should you do? So there are very important three three things mentioned here: the humility of the body, the humility of the speech, and the humility of the mind. Three things that are mentioned here. Humility of the body, as in giving pranam. Pranipatena means actually you do namaskara to your elders. Yes, you do that, right? Why? You want to express your humility. And then humility of speech, which is asking questions with a mood to understand and not to challenge. That's the humility of the speech. You ask pariprashna, you do pariprashna. And if it's humble, if you're listening with a mood to bring about some change, transform your heart, change your day-to-day habits, then the question that you have asked is humble, truly. And then sevaya, which is humility of the mind, which is the most difficult thing. You have to serve them, serve in many ways, serving through hearing, serving through actually doing something for them, doing what they want. That's difficult. These are the different ways in which you can figure out, is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu really Krishna? I want to find out this. Yes, ask this question, and ask this question with, and I'm sure you've asked this question with humility, and you will get the right questions, right answers to it as you progress in your journey, right? Keep this mind open and listen to what your mentors have to say about it, right, Mataji? So we cannot give you all the evidence here, but this is the mood with which you're going to start this journey, right, Mataji?
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you.
Okay, looks like sounds like from Mars because your your signal is not great.
Am I audible, Mataji?
Yes, you're
Thank you.
audible. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So I think we can.
Sorry, just to remind, right, like what Mataji said during our Gaur Purnima session, where we talked about the golden avatar in the Iron Age. Some of you might remember this slide where we talked about how we should understand Mahaprabhu as the Supreme Lord, right? We said SAFE, scripture, like what Mataji said, and we discussed so many pastimes about the astrology, different attributes of Mahaprabhu. And Mataji talked about the authorities, we quoted so many authorities on that day, and also so many extraordinary activities that Mahaprabhu did, right? So, right, some point of time, once again, we'll go in details. At this point of time, right, we're just giving a, because the paucity of the time and because how much we can digest, right, we can give in bits and pieces, but definitely we'll go, in detail sometime later once again. Thank you, Mataji, for really bringing this. Hare Krishna. Okay, any other questions or comments from anybody before we move on to the next part of our program? Yes, Ranjulata Mataji, remember that. SAFE, yeah. That's how we had really summarized. Thank you. So once again, thank you very much, Mataji. We are really, really grateful to you. And as some devotees have already mentioned, you have to, like Lord promises, it fulfills the, the desire of the devotees. So devotees also fulfill the desire of the devotees. So we would request you to please come sometime sooner to explain the rest of the Shikshastakam. So
Sure.
we'll plan it, Mataji.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare. So now, like we just got a very, very high level glimpse of the benedictions of chanting of the holy name, through this first verse of Shikshastakam. Usually when we chant every day early in the morning, we chant all the 8 slokas, right? Like this is right, not to just mechanically chant, but to really understand why we chant. As Mataji said, to establish the sambandha gyan, to really establish, we should not just do what exactly has been asked, why we do, and then why we really get from this Shikshastakam. So every day, right before chanting, we recite all these 8 slokas. So our intention is that over the next week or so, will familiarize with you more and more deeper aspects of the Shikshastakam, so that you can also start reciting the Shikshastakam before chanting of the holy name. Okay, so at least before chanting of the holy name, we have heard that we'll have to chant Panchatattva Mahamantra. So let's start with Prabhuji. Can we just get started directly? Yes, Hemu Mataji, we can also just listen the audio. That's also fine. And by the over a couple of days, then we can really memorize as well. Because we have already heard some glories of the holy name. Let's directly chant Panchatattva Mahamantra and chant the holy names. Okay, let's take center of Mahaprabhu and his associates by chanting Sri Krishna
Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Radha Srivasadi Gaur Bhakti. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Srivasadi Gaur Bhakti.
Hare Krishna Mahamantra ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Thank you very much for your enthusiastic participation in the chanting of the holy name. So, Prabhuji, let's move on to the breakout sessions and let's try to be back by 6:50, 6:50. So is it Kavita Mataji and Sunita Mataji? So you've joined for the first time or you're part of which group? You can tell us. Kavita, Irola Mataji and Sunita Mataji.